It's Harry Redknapp here. You're listening to a proper podcast. It's the Alan Hudson Podcast. It's proper football, proper talk.
Well, welcome again to the Alan Hudson Podcast. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, it would be great if you would just click on the subscribe button on the Alan Hudson Podcast channel on YouTube, and that would be absolutely fantastic if you could do that. As you can see today, Alan and I have been joined by someone who's familiar to all, if not most, of the Chelsea fans out there. He appears here, there, and everywhere. He's omnipresent. Actor, writer, book publisher, and all-round good egg.
Oh, well
It's
said.
Jonathan Kydd.
Thank you. Lovely to be on the show. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry, I'm very little at the moment. You're seeing most of my untidy bookshelf, whereas I should actually be a bit further forwards here. They get more of my head in, I think. But
it makes you look as if you're very well read, Jonathan.
Yeah, I put lots of books up there deliberately just so it looks impressive for you, you know.
Yeah, well, I know you and Alan, you meet up quite regularly at Stanford Bridge.
Well, we occasionally sit in the same area, it's an area, the hospitality area called Aussies, which it doesn't appear to have anybody to do with hospitality in it, because it's the same group of people I've been going with since the 90s. And I used to sit in the East Upper before that. Before that, I used to sit in the old East stand with my dad, or use my dad's ticket. But Bates did that wonderful thing of turning it into a hospitality area. I think he realised that it was financially he could profit from it. So every year the price went up. And but I remember coveting the middle seats because there's such a good view from the East Stand. I think it's you wouldn't be able to get planning permission for the angle. It's so far near to the pitch. In fact, it's the nearest to the pitch, I think, the East Stand middle, all those seats. But I used to sit in the East Stand upper, and I looked down and thought, oh, I'd love to sit there. And then I think I was in an ad. I'm an actor. I think I was in a television ad, and I thought, well, I can afford the season ticket, I'll apply for it. And I found myself sitting at the back, and it was just a pub inside. It was just, this is the 90s. And he just got a pub, and you paid for drinks, and it was, made out like a pub. And then clearly in his mind, Bates thought, actually, no, I think I can, I'll turn this and I'll make this into a restaurant. So it became a restaurant, but still a bit crap. It was sort of pub food. And slowly but surely, as the years went on, it became a hospitality area. But I'm still sitting with the same people that I've been sitting with for ages. We're not hospitality. We don't get people in there who are, specifically have come just for one match. It's season tickets, and we're all season ticket holders. However, we're about to have the prices go up, and I fear we may all be priced up. But I think we're getting into a slightly political area that we need to talk about later. But yes, Alan and I, when Alan comes in, and we meet each other when he's sitting there. So he's sitting in the hospitality area when we're having grub, and I always come and say hello, and I always fawn and bow down to his excellence, and it's great to be great to be with somebody who was one of my favorite players of the time. And I always loved Alan's superb skill and ability to change games in a moment, which is it's such joy to be able to watch a player who can do that. And that was the kind of feeling that Alan gave me, was this ability to I mean, beautiful passing, or running with the ball was just Alan was fantastic. Enough. I'm blowing so much smoke up your arse. I can't bear it. I can't do it anymore.
Well,
Sorry.
it's the important thing about what you're talking about, Jonathan, is you painted a lovely picture, but I didn't play my best football till I got to Stoke. So the people that talk about me in Stoke would paint an entirely different picture, because I've been the player at Stoke City. And the reason I say that is because it was a lack of insight from management and directorship that let that happen. I went on to prosper to become the player that I've always wanted to be, under the great management of Tony Waddington. When you think Peter Osgood, kind of, although he got to a cup final with Manchester United, he was
with Southampton. Yeah.
Wasn't the Peter Osgood that played at Stanford Bridge, was he?
No, but you could argue that he wasn't the Peter Osgood the original Peter Osgood when Emlyn Hughes broke his leg, couldn't you? Because he in actual fact was a slightly different play. He started playing midfield more because he'd been more an out and out striker. I mean, I'm of an era. I remember when Barry Bridges was on the subs bench because Ozzy was playing instead of him, and everybody started clapping for Barry Bridges to come on because Ozzy. This was the beginning of Ozzy's career, so I've actually watched him from the very beginning. But Alan, what I love about the fact that you obviously play your best football at Stoke, but we knew, those of us who watched regularly, that you were exceptional. And even though you didn't think that at the time you were playing your best, for us, we just saw a fantastic player, you know. So what I get with trying to explain this to people, I love watching great players play at Chelsea because they elevate the standard around everybody else. And also I say, always keep, if you can, try and look at these players, try and relish these moments with these great players, because you know, as with life, it just goes, it's over. They'll go somewhere else. Something happened. They'll have a row with somebody. It'll change. And it's the same way of looking at, I love watching Hazard play, a superb player. But once again, you knew there was only a certain shelf life. So just like watching Thiago Silva, you knew that, you know, it's only had a three or 4 year time with the club, and yet brilliant player, joyous to watch. And in the same way, I found watching you and the team and what you did with the team fantastic. I mean, I agree completely. So I wished that you hadn't gone to Stoke. In the same way, I wished Pat Nevin hadn't gone to Everton. I wished these players hadn't had to be sold. I wished, obviously, that great Chelsea side of the 70s hadn't been broken up purely for financial reasons, or in some instances, obviously, because you're not getting on with the manager. I mean, I know you've spoken before about not getting on with Dave Sexton, but and I was aware of that. But at the same time, that's once again, that as you get older, you appreciate that that's what happens in life, isn't it? You work with certain people. You know, from my experience, you work with certain directors, you work with certain people. It doesn't click. Nothing happens. You work with certain actors, it doesn't work. So you have to move away from it. It's just something. It's a shame that in a footballer's life, it's a very small window, because they're as athletes, they have about a 10 to 12 year period before their bodies aren't up to it anymore. So unless you're Thiago Silva, which is exceptional, but so please don't say that you didn't play. I knew you played your best at Stoke, which is a shame, because I'm now jealous of the fact that Stoke had you.
Well, no, it's a personal thing which supporters in general don't understand the reasons why you leave.
Of course.
And everybody finds, as Jeff Powell of the Daily Mail put it quite mildly, everybody finds their Svengali, and I found mine at Stoke. I would never have played at that level at Chelsea. But by the way, while you were talking, it was like listening. You could be echoing the words of Matthew Harding.
Really? I never met him.
That was Matthew. Well, Matthew had exactly the same feel about Chelsea as what you've just spoke about. Don't let your best players go. Always have the best players in a Chelsea shirt, and this kind of stuff. Matthew was very, well, he was like you anyway. He was a supporter.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting.
I sometimes sit down and wonder, and I don't dream, but I think what life would have been like if he would have been in charge in 1970.
Yes.
He would never let that happen. This is a change in management and directorship and everything.
And yet the vision
Matthew,
of having
Matthew would never let that happen.
No, I get you, but
because of the feelings that you have.
Yeah, but well, the fans don't. When it comes to financial situations, the fans get elbowed, don't they? Really, we're just observers. The
as well, Matthew could back his
feelings
up with his money.
I know, absolutely. But at the time, in fact, you think about it, the vision that the Mayor's setup had for the ground, for the stadium, was fantastic in that era. It was a fantastic. You still see the pictures of it, with the East Stand being the beginning one. It was superb. Yeah. But they cocked it up completely. They completely cocked it up to such an extent that they were willing to
Well,
sell.
mate, I've got to be fair. I've got to be fair, Jonathan. My granddaughter could sketch a stadium, you know. It doesn't mean she could run a football club. She's 14.
That's true.
She's very good. She could actually do a better stadium than that. But what you do with your stadium, no good having a stadium if you ain't got no players to put in it.
That's true.
And this is where the difference between Brian Mears, even Ken Bates, without Matthew, Ken Bates would have been nothing. Trust me. Matthew told me stories about, and I knock about with one of Matthew's great friends now. I can mention his name, he won't mind, Kevin Conlon, and he's a great friend of Matthew's, went all over the country and worked in the city with him. And when he went away, he told me stories about going up to Leeds. He would have his Chelsea shirt on in a bar with 100, 200 Leeds supporters and stuff like that, you know. And Kevin would say to him, get in that bathroom and change your shirt, turn it inside out, put a jumper on, do anything, but get that. They're all staring at you. And he'd say, well, they can stare all day long. He said, then about a quarter of an hour later, they're all gathering. And then all of a sudden, Matthew's face come up on the television talking as a Chelsea director. They said he's a board member, you know, and so they had this even more wound up. So it's like a story of a little like the story of Ali McCoist. I love the story of Ali McCoist when he's driving through Glasgow with his pal in a car, and he says to his pal, pull up over there. He said, we're going to have a couple of pints. He said, you can't go in there. They're all Celtic. They hate you. They hate us. He said, go in there. So he pulls up and he walks in his pub. There's 100 people in there, maybe more. And you can hear a pin drop. And he walks through and walks to the bar, and the silence, and everybody's glaring at him and wondering, do you think you're going to get out there alive, you know? And Ali just turns around to the barman and says, get everybody a drink. And they all went, yes. That's the kind of thing that Matthew would do. You know what I mean? We're all friends. We're all friends. But the game hasn't started yet. Let's leave the war till, you know. Yeah. But that's the way Matthew was. And it was, you know, I feel sorry. I feel sorry for myself. I don't, you know, get down about it. But I'm a great believer. When I used to write books, I would pick my best team. If I had a football club, who would be chairman, who would be, you know, kit man, who would be this, the players, everybody would, all the best of everything, the stadium, the supporters, you know, everything. The best pub outside there, you know, which would have been probably the Stanford Bridge Arms when Danny Giller and my friend ran it. But this is what you look at. All these things you look at when you're in a football club, and that's what Matthew wanted. He wanted the best for Chelsea supporters. He didn't want to go and sit in Monte Carlo with all his millions and millions of pounds, you know. And he wouldn't have went to Leeds, trust me.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have took over Leeds. But anyway, that's that point. But that's a compliment headed for you, because you spoke exactly the words that Matthew Harding would speak.
Oh, well, thank you. It's interesting. We do a thing I do the CFC Fancast podcast, and we do something called 50 Years of Chelsea, and we go back and look at the years. And the many instances I've deliberately expunged, I've got rid of it from my mind because it's been too painful for me. But we go through lots of the games, and I find myself reliving the games, even though they're 30 years ago or 25 years ago, because I just can't help it. I can't help, or particularly, you know, dreadful moments or dreadful decisions by referees. And it intrigues me that within me, I've got this. You should
have been a player.
I should. Oh God, I'd love to have been a player. Oh my goodness.
I mean, you should have been a player, because I've just been sitting down watching the telly, and I get fleeting moments when I watch some player make a bad pass, and I thought, did I do that? Yes, I did. I can remember. I'm my own biggest critic, and I'd watch him think, how could I make a pass that bad? You know, and you relive your bad moments in the game. I never relive the glory moments. I relive all the bad moments and wonder how you can be that bad.
Hey, every time I watch Desazi, I think, why have you just passed to the other shirted player who is in front of you? What is going on in your mind? What happened in that moment that you decided to do that? And I'm afraid my reaction is I get very, very sweary at football, and I can't do that in the East Stand because you'd be thrown out. If I go away, I'm just a series of dreadful noises that are, all X-rated, because I cannot believe players making mistakes as simple as that. And yet, perhaps, thinking the other side, enormous pressures, not confident, very young. I'm trying to find excuses for this current side that I'm talking about, other than the last 6 games where they actually looked like a decent team. And he seemed to have accidentally stumbled upon something that seemed to work, and that was due to injuries, other than and he actually didn't make any substitutions in one of the games, come which one it was. And the bench was just youth after youth after youth, because they had 13 injuries at the time. And yet it was one of the best performances of the season towards the end. And you thought, well, he's got Chalobah playing there. I could have told you he's pretty good.
But let me stop you, Jonathan. Let me stop you. Yeah. Do you honestly believe what you just said? Because if young Palmer hadn't come down from Man City, do you really think this rehabilitation kind of thing would have worked? Do you really think Chelsea would have won all their matches?
I wasn't saying that. I didn't say that at all. I was talking.
No, but I'm saying
on
the most important. Yeah. The most important. But we're going back to exactly the Matthew Harding thing and all that. This player now should be kept hold of and built a team round. And most of your players you can replace. They're replaceable. This fella is not.
No, but he's they'd have been relegated without him. They'd have been relegated, I reckon.
Well,
I think he was that influential and good.
Well, I hate him then.
No, but I think that and also he was 4th choice, wasn't he? They tried to buy Smith Rowe. They tried to buy. We have to put it down to the gurus, to the sports directors. They got it. They got it right with these other 3. They wanted to buy Garnacho. They wanted to buy Gordon. Wanted to buy Smith Rowe's not a bad player, and they wanted to buy Ollie's, wasn't it, from Palace? All of whom you look at them and they're top players, and they made offers for them. And the one that they got finally, I think, because there was a Manchester City connection with one of the. I can't remember the name of the guy. And they got him, and he recommended him. And he's turned out, because he started off as a sub, he didn't play at the beginning. He played Bournemouth. He didn't play. He was a sub. And lo and behold, he's absolutely brilliant and a top player for whom you, as you say, you should be building the team around. But will they? What's going to happen now with this environment, with this Diet Pep man who's been plucked from the championship? I mean, one despairs at the same time, hoping. Always have hope. I always think that something might work in this situation. You always think, well, perhaps it will work. Perhaps he's got something about him. Perhaps the style of football he wants to play will fit, or he's impressed them clearly at the interview level, but has he impressed them at the football level? He's got no experience of the Premier League. He's got what's he done? He's been in I think he was sacked from somewhere. Was it Parma? Yeah. And he's had and he played football in the middle of the season where the Leicester fans wanted him out because it was all going tits up, and then he gets his mojo back again, and they get and they get promoted. But is that good enough to have you as manager of the elite club that Chelsea are? We won the Champions League 3 years ago, and all right, new owners, all right, we're supposed to believe in the project, but it's very difficult being a Chelsea fan at the moment. Very, very difficult, particularly with the success of the last 20 years. Particularly,
I'm afraid.
There's more what to come. I didn't hear you.
There's more twists and turns to come.
Oh,
hey, Tony's trying to get a word. What do you want to say?
No, I'm fascinated listening to both of you. And Jonathan comes from the era that I come from, the 60s and the 70s. And I'd like to go back to the beginning for Jonathan. And I think we mentioned this, or Jonathan mentioned this right at the start. I think his dad got Jonathan involved in the 60s and the 70s. And although Jonathan is known by most Chelsea fans out there, I'm not sure they really know about his history and how he began his connection with Chelsea. So I'd be intrigued to know how it all happened back in those days, Jonathan.
Thank you, Tony. Always a joy to be able to talk about myself. I love it. Thank you. I'm very
good a player I could have been.
My dad was the very well-known character actor called Sam Kydd, who was a big Chelsea fan. And in fact, he watched when he came back from the war. He'd been a prisoner of war for 5 years, and he wrote a book about it called "For You the War Is Over," which I've just republished. And it's a great read because it's about just a prisoner for 5 years as an ordinary soldier. He's not escaping. He's not digging tunnels. He's just trying to live, trying to go and they could put them on work parties, trying to starve them to death. It's a wonderful story and yet appalling story of how to survive in an environment where many of them gave up and he didn't, and he put on lots of shows. And he then first one of the first two things he did when he came out of the war was he went and went to a comedy club and did an act with a mate because he'd been performing in the camps. It was almost as if it was a kind of saying, look, I'm here, I can do this. And it was a well-known club in Leicester Square, in fact, that was called the Nuffield, where lots and lots of cabaret people went to. Lots of stars of the era were performing. So you'd get your Dennis Nordens, your Benny Hills, your Harry Seacombs, all of that stuff. I'm sorry if these are people you don't know about, but they're all big stars of the 50s and 60s. The other thing he did was he went and watched Chelsea play Moscow Dynamo. 1945, 100,000 people stood by the goal because they just let everybody in. There were people on the stands, there were people everywhere, all over the place. There were people, practically, I think, people hanging from the floodlights to watch, and the police just let them. And yeah.
Jonathan, sorry, just forgive me a second. You may have already mentioned his name, but just mention his name so everyone's aware.
That's I did mention it. Yes, Sam Kydd, yeah. SAMKYDD. There's a website, samkydd.com. You can see him. I've set it up. It's all he made. He was in over 290 films, more than any other British actor, hundreds and hundreds of tellies. He was a star, but he was very self-effacing, and he wasn't a star in the sense that he didn't splash money around, never had any money. I don't know what happened. He backed the horses a lot. He got done by the tax man. His excuse, he said he spent money on me. He said too much. I spent too much money on you. He said, oh God, what? Used to play football with me, used to play cricket. Lovely, fantastic dad. And took me to Chelsea.
He was a good father.
Fantastic father. Took me to Chelsea when I was a baby. So I can actually say that I've seen Chelsea I actually went I'm 70. I went to the 1955 title winning team as a baby. He took me up. He took me into the. In fact, he wrote a note about it in his. He wrote an autobiography. It never got published, which I'm using as a kind of core to do his memoirs. I'm writing the second book at the moment. I've written the first book, 1945 to 1952, a period in which he was in 119 films, and it sold about 2,000 copies. It's a good read. That's called Be a Good Boy, Sam, and that's on Amazon. I'm giving myself a plug here, but yes, he used to take me. Apparently, at the Old East Stand, I don't know if you remember this, Alan. The bar was at the back, and you had big windows at the bar, and you could stand and watch the game from the bar. And the guy on the turnstile, he brought me in, and the guy said, "Better sit in the bar. You better sit at the back in the bar and watch." And I watched. I think it was Chelsea play. I can't remember the game. He'd written it down. I can't remember, but we won. But I wouldn't have known. But he used to sit with John Mills, Richard Attenborough, all of the guys, Vidal Sassoon, masses of agents, Sid Collin. There was what was I can't remember her name. Oh dear, big actress, married to Anthony Newley.
Susanna York.
No. Earlier than that. Still alive. But anyway, there were old masses of. It was that era. But he'd started watching in the 50s, so he had a season ticket from the 50s all the way up, and was but he loved that football of that era. Loved it. He loved the Venables side. He loved the Doherty side. He loved Terry Venables. He loved Barry Bridges. He loved Bert Murray, all of that lot, that Bobby Tambling, that was very much his, I suppose, successful, that initial success. He loved that kind of football. Because the Doc was always experimenting with overlapping fullbacks and stuff, and he loved the pace and the speed, and it does the fact that Chelsea were now no longer a laughing stock, because they'd been it was that glorious unpredictability we always had in the 50s and the 60s, but they were being taken seriously as a team. Anyway, he used to take me, and he then if he couldn't go, he'd give me a season ticket. I remember going to the 63 Chelsea versus Portsmouth game. We won 7-0, and I have no memory of any of the goals at all. I think Bobby Tambling got 4. I do remember, bizarrely, Frank Upton scoring from the halfway line, and it being disallowed for offside. And that's weirdly the only image I can remember of the game, and I don't know why. But it is a very long time ago. It's 62 years ago. But from there, I've just went to as many. He used to take me, and we used to do that thing of walking round. You could walk around either end of the ground at the time. So you'd go to where Chelsea were attacking, and you just wander around if you could. But some games you couldn't. If it was United, there'd be 52,000 there or 60,000. So you just stood where you were and watched. I remember they had those little hoops, those little fences around the perimeter, and you could just fit your face in the little hoop if you're at the front and watch the game through the hoop. Bizarrely, I don't know why. They seem to be a fixture at every ground. These interlinked hooped fences on the perimeter of the ground. They had them at Fulham. I remember I used to watch Fulham as well. So what my dad used to do at that period was he went to Fulham away. He'd go to Chelsea at home and Fulham away. He also went to watch Rangers, Queen's Park Rangers, because they were local. They'd get the odd ticket for that. He'd had a trial with Queen's Park Rangers, so he had an affection for them. He was a nifty winger, my dad. But he used to go to Fulham because he'd stand in the enclosure and get tips from other actors, because lots and lots of other actors would stand in the enclosure at Fulham, and they accepted the fact that large numbers of people watching Fulham were Chelsea fans, and vice versa, because that's what you sort of did, and there was an affinity. And they used to play Dear Old Pals, Jolly Old Pals at the end of the game, because they were aware of the fact that there was this affiliation in the club. There was that, which of course you don't get now at all. It's now, We Hate Chelsea is in part of their opening song to us. So to them, whenever they've got a fixation, in the same way that we have We Hate Tottenham in The Liquidator, which I'm not a fan of, because I don't hate Tottenham. I don't hate any other team. And I think it's, I don't think you can ever get rid of that now. I think it's sort of part of the fabric of watching Chelsea, but it's a shame there is having said that though, the team doesn't like at Chelsea is Leeds, but I go back from that era as well, from the 60s and 70s. So we tend to have a go at Leeds on the Fancast quite a lot. But anyway, to talk about more of myself, just used to go. I've got a lovely picture of me in the 1966 Inter Milan kit, and my dad bought me a shirt and the shorts, which were on sale at Frank Blunston's shop, I remember. And it's unfortunate I'm upstaged by a hydrangea because we shot it in the garden. So the hydrangea takes over, and I'm standing there proudly in my Inter Milan Chelsea kit, which of course the kit we wore when we lost ignominiously to Sheffield Wednesday 2-0, and I was there watching with my dad. It was I hated it. It was so upsetting.
Jonathan, it's interesting you should mention that, because our previous guest on the podcast was none other than Jim McCalliog.
Ah, wow, fantastic! Of course, scored against us. What a decent player he was.
Going back, Jonathan, interesting you say about your first experience was the long bar. Of course, we all know about the long bar, because that was one of the reasons Sexton wanted the ground changed, because he wanted to get rid of that.
Really?
Because the players that weren't selected to play on a Saturday would go in that bar, and he would walk through the bar to wherever he was going upstairs, and when he weren't on the touchline. And one day he put a notice on the dressing room board: players seen drinking in the bar will be stopped a week's wages, or something like that. No drinking in the East Stand bar, and it really used to rile him. And I remember that Christmas, it was cold. No, I wasn't playing. I don't think Tommy was playing. Tommy Baldwin, and we were up there as usual. Take no notice what's on the, the side. What the manager says. We never took any notice of what he said. And we're drinking.
That's surprising, isn't it, John?
Day. Freezing cold day. We're standing there watching, looking out the window, talking to our friends. John Alderton, Rodney Bewes, Richard O'Sullivan. These the lesser known people that what you're talking about, but good lads. And we're drinking cups and saucers. We got coffees with large brandies, and Sexton walking by, and he wouldn't even come over and say, "Can I check your cup?" Can I give you a breathalyzer? Because it got that bad, He really was, and that was one of the reasons he wanted to stay that stand redone. He hated that. That was really a thorn in his side. So it's interesting you say, can we remember that? It was a big part of our social scene.
Of course. Ridiculous. Of course.
When you weren't playing up.
Yeah, of course.
To stand there drinking, having a coffee and a brandy with Jane Seymour, my God.
You've made me remember, of course, now that when I was little, I'd go. My dad even went up to when I was about 4 and 5. Would bring me in over the turnstile, and I'd sit on his lap, or I'd go up to the bar myself and just sit there and watch through the window. And that was an era when he got me in for nothing, because I was, because he was babysitting supposedly, and they'd say, "Yeah, Sam, bring him in." But I remember
these are one of the reasons I've got no money.
But because
people didn't used to pay to get in them days.
You're right.
You're the reason.
I am. I should have given them my 1 and 6.
That's why I'm in a Chelsea council flat.
Yeah. But no, but I remember now. I remember seeing the players in the bar. You've set something up for me there. I remember seeing them. I remember being in awe. I was always in awe of any Chelsea player. It's Peter Braybrook. Oh, look, a player from that era. Who's the other? Graham Moore. Graham Moore, I remember, big Welshman, wasn't he? He was a big centre forward, and they sold him to Man United. Who are other players that I loved? I love Barry Bridges' goal celebrations, because he used to punch the air beautifully, and he's always sprinting onto the ball. But anyway, this is just a bit pre-you. Just to go on a bit from me. And then I went to lots of these. Went to the '67 Cup final with my dad. Went to the semi-final, beating Leeds with my dad. Used to go with him. And then slowly but surely, when he worked away, or when he was working, I used to go and use his season ticket. And then when the East Stand was knocked down and we were up in the West Stand, I used to watch from there, using his season ticket once again if he wasn't available. But otherwise, I used to go. We'd go together, and then I'd either go and stand in the shed, or whichever was available the other end. Or try and get a 50p in the benches, 50p bench you could sit in the West Stand. And then I went to college, went to a few away games, didn't go to as many home games, didn't have the ticket. We didn't have the ticket anymore. I then applied for, actually, that's not true. We moved to the East Stand Upper. That was the option, with the East Stand Upper. And that was when I started thinking I'd really like to go into the middle. Now, in the meantime, I played Sunday football with Hugh Hastings, who was the Chelsea program maker and photographer at the time. And when they wanted to get, they were interested in the branding, and they were looking at the examples from America of people dressed up in outfits. He said to me, we've got an idea for a lion. And you've done some work with this. I'd been Fat Puffin at the Puffin Books exhibition, dressed in a costume, and I'd been in a film just as a cat. And he said, we're getting people to try and pitch to be Stanford the Lion. Would you be interested? And I said, well, yeah, I'd have to charge you. Of course, I've charged them a tenner, as it happened. But this is 1980, and a tenner, you could go down the West End and get a slap-up meal, and go to the theatre for a tenner, and rent a small flat for a tenner. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But So I had to pitch for this thing. I had to write what I would do as the Lion. The Lion should be energetic. The Lion should be a symbol of aspiration for kids and for the supporters. I had to do all of this, and made my debut in the middle of it wasn't at the beginning of the season, it was halfway through. Met the marketing guy, and he approved, and I was the very first Stanford the Lion.
Well, I didn't realise we were going to get an exclusive today.
And I have told the story before, but people haven't been particularly interested. So but I was briefly on the Chelsea podcast. This is about 10 years ago, and before Chidge at Stanford, Chidge at Chelsea Fancast poached me. But so I've told that story on there. But I don't think I've ever told the story on the Fancast. But this was an era where Velcro hadn't been invented, and so it was all hooks and eyes, and it was a ridiculously heavy costume. And when you got the costume on, you had these big boots. Now I was playing Sunday football with Hugh, and I was quite fit. Playing midfield, actually. I used to play. I always thought of you, actually. I'd say, and Hudson slides it through. I'd say when I get the ball. I was. Put the costume on. I remember I had to be helped on with the costume by the tea guy. There was a tea guy. There were those guys with brown overalls, little brown coats, Alan, who used to do the tea for you at half time. Anyway, there was one of them, had to be helped into the costume, went onto the pitch, did everything I'd said, ran up and down. High fives hadn't been invented yet. You shook everybody's hand. Went round the pitch, got a ball, kicked the ball in the net, saluted, went back to the halfway line. People, all the West Ham fans shouted out, "Who the hell are you?" from the other end, because it was West Ham. Bowed to them, shook all the players' hands, escorted a small boy, the mascot, onto the pitch. Was just unbelievably energetic. It was the most sweaty experience. I was only wearing my underpants in the outfit. It was so heavy, and it was really huge effort had to be made. And I went back into the changing room, and nobody had worked this out at all. It was some room off the change room, some room off the side, and I couldn't get the costume off. I couldn't undo the hooks and eyes, and so I was wriggling around on the floor with my head off like a kind of salmon, and I gave up and just sat there. And I thought, well, I can't go out. What do I do? I can't head back on? Do I go back into the through the tunnel? Go back? What do I do? So I sat there and I waited for the tea bloke to reappear, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm just waiting I can't get my costume off." So he helped me get the costume off, because I had the big lion hands, which were part of the costume, which obviously couldn't help with the hooks and eyes. And he got the costume off, and it was now about 2 minutes to half time. So I wandered down the tunnel to the touchline, and a steward came up to me and said, "Yes." And I said, "I've just been the Lion." He said, "Yeah, and I'm Peter Osgood." And I was escorted out of the ground, frog marched out, and thrown out, and had to come back in again on my season ticket, which I luckily still had with me. But and this happened on 3 occasions until I got a pass, and then I waggled the pass at him and went, "I've got a pass now." But they still could not put anybody on. They disapproved of it. I think there was a period where they were a bit skeptical about the idea of a bloke dressing up in a costume and bouncing about on the pitch. And I wasn't being how can I put it? Self-effacing. I wasn't hanging about. I was really making myself, a big part of the pre-match routine, which I think was similarly frowned upon, because I was leaping about like
I would say it was more like being a pest.
Yeah, I was a pest. Yeah, I would agree with you. I was a complete pest. And rather than say to me,
I had to do that to get attention, Jonathan. My God.
Well, I was given a job, an actor. I was given a job. I thought, well, I'll do it well, So I ran down. I even ran down to the shed. I ran down, waved at everybody. Did.
Well, listen, there's more actors. There's more actors playing football today than ever.
Yeah, there are. True, there are. They're very clever with the dive.
Come on.
But anyway, so after nobody said to me, "Tone it down, Jonathan." They just said they just sacked me. I got the sack. So. That was the end of that. So I did something wrong, but also I think they then gave it to somebody retired, a pensioner, and he clearly had great difficulty with the boots, because he just used to wander on as if he got piles. and he'd wander up to the centre circle with the mascot. He'd conduct blue is the colour. He'd come from the centre circle. That was his big thing. And then he'd wander back, shaking a few hands and waving to a few people. Then he'd disappear. And I remember looking on and thinking, God, he's got no energy. It's some old bloke in there, isn't there? He can't deal with a costume. And that's what they wanted. But they shouldn't have originally asked for, I will make him dynamic. I will make him, an energetic symbol of the club. What they wanted was just somebody to wander on, wave, shake hands and wander off again, which anybody could do. And also he was free, this bloke. He was free, whereas I charged them a tenner. I thought, I am an artiste. Excuse me, got to charge somebody something. But yeah, that was that was a period. And the other claim to fame out of the period was I sang on Blue Day. Because Mike Canaris, who wrote the song, people think it's Suggs, obviously, because he sang it, but no, Mike Canaris was the author, and he engineered it, and the Chelsea team recorded it. But what you do is, in these instances, you have a bed of people singing it, so you've got the tune there already, and they can then have the players singing it and lay the players over the top, or not, as the case may be, put them very low down in the mix. Because let's be honest, we're not hearing great voices from the players. I mean, you sang on Blue is the Colour, didn't you, Alan? But did you? Are you prominently featured on Blue is the Colour? Can we hear you? Can we hear? Do you listen to it and go, "It's me"? Listen, you can hear me. Do you hear that? You can.
Well, I can't, but my mother swore every time she heard it that my voice was outstanding. But that's what mothers are for.
Fantastic.
But listening to Jonathan's stories there from the 60s and 70s, that must resonate with you, Al, because that was an era when, you used to turn up for a game and there'd always be a celebrity in the dressing room. I mean, Dickie Attenborough used to bring a celebrity virtually every week.
No, it's amazing. There was a load of celebrities about. I become very friendly in the end. It was there the famous day when I bumped into Bobby Moore. I was with Dennis Waterman was my guest, and I love Dennis. He was a great fella.
I used to play for his. I used to play for his football team.
Yeah, I played with him and against them. I played in the Tony Curry Testimonial, who had a team up there. But listen to Jonathan go on and.
Go on. Yes.
Always amazing. No, you do go on, don't you? You go on.
I do go on. I've got Tony can always interrupt me. I am able to be. I can't.
No. You know about television and podcasts. There's only one man can shoot you, and that's yourself. Anyway, let's move on. That was just. Frank Lampard was just a great example of the success. How success can be a smokescreen at times. You lose sight of what you actually got and how you got it.
The difficulty I have, Alan, is that I've always loved seeing the ball in the back of the net ever since I was little. And I really yearn for that all the time with Chelsea. I just like, and occasionally I'll look at I'll think how they're playing, or they're playing 4-2-3-1, or they're playing, oh, look, they've got an inverted fullback there. And I'll think after time, I don't care. I just want the ball in the net, please. Can we just have a goal, please? I want the ball. And particularly with this inability that they've all got to actually, particularly last season, the final third, not being able to score at all, not being able to hit a cow's ass with a banjo most of the time, particularly with poor old Jackson, who has a bizarre ability to be fantastic and flick the ball around the opponent and run after it and outpace everybody. We gave Kyle Walker a run for his money, and they get in front of goal and miss an open goal. You just go, what are we dealing with here? But I find the desire to win, to be successful, once you've had it, once you've tasted it for the club, you just want more and more and more. I found that being brought up on the success of your era of winning the FA Cup and the European Cup Winners' Cup, and then having 26 years of misery. I mean, the League Cup final, losing that against your eventual team was a mystery, because we were in great form at the time when we were obviously the favourites to win it, and it was you didn't expect to walk away.
It wasn't a mystery, Jonathan. It wasn't a mystery. It was a mistake by the manager.
All right. I'm sure it's one of the.
Section made a big mistake. If I can just explain one thing to you.
Tell me. Yeah.
If I'm a manager of a football team, this is what management should be like. When Chelsea played Leeds at Wembley, Eddie Gray, our guest a few weeks ago, had a lovely time against David Webb playing right back at Wembley. David Webb wasn't a right back. He was a central defender who was a better player in their box than he was ours. Scored more goals, important goals. He was one of those. He's a glory hunter, but a good player. A good player. You'd rather have him with you than against you. When we played Stoke in the final, he should have learned his lesson and not put David right back in.
Did he
by him and made the winning goal?
Who did he put him on? Who did he put David Webb on in the Stoke final?
Oh, it looks as though we've lost him again. We're having a lot of trouble with his sound today. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me, John? Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Oh, he's back.
He's back. So
yeah, we froze.
Alan, who did he put?
What I'm saying is,
who did he put?
He should never have played David Webb right back against Conroy. Terry Conroy is quick.
Yeah.
And David Webb's record at Wembley was, he must have dreaded walking out of Wembley again after that first meeting, And yeah. It does stick with you. It does stick with you with cup finals. I played 2 cup finals and lost them both. I played one in the League Cup and one with Arsenal in the final, and I lost them both. And when you walk out, it's on your mind of what last time I was here. It's a strange thing, and Dave should have known better. And it cost us the League Cup.
Yes.
One moment.
Yes, it's good to know. I'd forgotten. I'm afraid. I'm now remembering, and I'm now bitter.
You didn't forget. You never even knew that in the first place. So don't say you've forgotten.
No, I forgot that. Yes, all right. I didn't know that in the first place. I wasn't football intelligent enough at the time, and I've been forced, after being on various fancasts, and podcasts. I've been forced to learn more about football, and I feel the better for it. But the dilemma is we then had 20, how many years, 71 to 26 years without a trophy. And because we tasted the joy of the fantastic 60s side, going into the 70s side, you don't ever lose that. So what you're suggesting is that you should be like Fulham and never win anything, and then we'd all be happier in life. Because otherwise, all I've done is just wanted to have success ever after, and now I've gone for success. I love seeing great players play for Chelsea.
I wanted success as a player, and I was quite successful where I went. I was very successful in Seattle. We broke the record in Seattle after I'd been out of the game for a little while at Arsenal. I got to a final with Arsenal, although I didn't play that good. I had limited success at Chelsea before they kicked us out. Because of their foolishness. But as a supporter, I don't see how you can feel. These supporters that say to me, well, I can remember when I went to so-and-so, there was 6,000 people there, and we went 5 hours there, 5 hours back. Well, I know what I'd rather be doing for them 10 hours. And it wouldn't be going up to Darlington or wherever. And is that what football is all about? Going through the misery?
I think for lots of people, going to football is going with your mates. It's having a group of people that you enjoy seeing and going with, and the football almost becomes 90 minutes it's a bit of a distraction, But yeah, I agree with you. I find going to Darlington. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Do you think a lot of these fans that used to go in the shed and all that, watch the game, could tell you about the game afterwards?
They'd have
Actually happened.
they'd have not in a tactical way, no, but I think in an effort way, who they like, what the goal was like. You're sharing these experiences. I mean, I was very aware that you had a very, very different brain from a lot of people around you. Your ability, Alan, I remember us very specific. I don't know why this is the case. It always comes back to me. About 3 men were on you, and you just flicked the ball through one of the guy's legs, a pass, and the 3 were taken out. And you could do this regularly. You'd be in tight spots, and you just pass the ball, and you'd get out of it. And that was one of the joys I had of thinking, as well as your dribbling and your vision and your ability to put through very beautiful precision passes. Tight spots, you were very good at getting up, for flicking the ball through or controlling it and then laying it off. That was one of your strengths for me. So you'd be able to talk as a fan about that. That's one of the things I've always said about you. To somebody says, "What was Alan Hudson like?" I say, "Well, superb passing, superb vision of the game. Would leave people for dead. Could dribble beautifully, but also brilliant ability to get the ball out of tight spots, thus putting players out of the game." Now, I tactically didn't know particularly what was going on. All I knew was, there'd be a tall bloke up front probably who'd be laying the ball if you're playing 4-4-2, as it was then. I was brought up on Christmas tree setup. I was still myself. I played right. I played inside right most of the time, which is midfield. But so I wouldn't say tactically we knew particularly, but from an ability to talk about an appreciation.
No, I don't. I wasn't. I'm not one. I agree with you. I'm not particularly bright on tactics. When you boil down to it, was like Saturday. This Saturday, I bumped into 2 people on the way to Wimbledon. I went to Wimbledon to sit for a book signing on Saturday, and they were Chelsea supporters there. I got called by 2 people that told me that Manchester City were going to slaughter Manchester United, and I went, "No, they won't. Manchester United will give them a game today. You wait and see." And they beat them. I don't. And he's supposed to be tactically the most astute manager around, Pep Guardiola. Well, I don't think so. I don't see that. What does he do that nobody else does? I played for a manager that was light years ahead. I've got to tell you something now. They're all talking about they're the best team ever. They wouldn't have lived with Ferguson's team. Ferguson's team would have tore this team, Manchester City team, apart.
Which era?
Cantona.
Oh yeah, Cantona team, right? Yeah.
Well, with Cantona and all them, even with Sheringham, the great Teddy Sheringham.
Great player, yeah.
With Mark Hughes.
Wonderful.
Them playing with Roy Keane and Brian Robson and all these players. That this Manchester City team would never. They would beat them 99 times out.
I'm not convinced they would be able to deal with the fitness of it.
Ferguson.
Very
and
different.
If people getting away about who?
You
think Brian Robson wouldn't be able to? Brian Robson would drink them all under the table and go out and outrun them the next day. Trust me.
I don't know the pace of the game. So different.
I was with him 3 weeks ago, and he looks like he play. You can only run so fast. How many fullbacks have you seen better today or quicker than Eddie McCready?
Yeah, McCready was a wonderful player. I agree. I keep saying they're all wonderful players, but in my mind they were. But yeah, no, I agree.
How many
very, very
Jonathan, how many quicker? You can only run so fast.
It's true.
You can only run so fast.
No, but it's the 90 minutes running at the pace that they play at, though. I would think I'm not convinced that players of that era would keep up. I'm sorry. I just think it's become so athletically superior to anything from that period. I think they'd probably give them a game for 20 minutes, and then they'd be gasping because the ball is just played. The pace of the game is just so huge. It's just it whizzes by. I can't see it. There would be, and also they couldn't tackle in the same way. You'd have to have a completely different assessment of tackling. You can't have Eddie kicking Billy Bremner in the head. You can't have high
They don't tackle today. They can't tackle. They don't know how to tackle today.
Exactly.
That's
they'd
why they pull shirts.
Sent off immediately. Yes, they do. That's right. Well, they try and do, and the arm round.
How fit do you think Thiago Silva is?
Oh, completely wonderful. However, playing centre half as he is.
No, I mean you're talking about fitness level.
Yeah. Sorry, I meant I've used that word again. I shouldn't have used it. I would say that he was fortunate in that he's playing centre half, so he's not actually having. He's playing with the same kind of skill that Bobby Moore had. So he's judging and assessing. But you've got to be peak fitness of I would say. How do we evaluate fitness? The fact that he can actually still play in the Premier League spoke volumes for his fitness levels. I mean, and the fact that because he read the game so wonderfully. That was one of the aspects of why he had the longevity he had. That's why he actually carried on playing so long. But he still ran. He could outpace a centre forward. I've seen him do it. Okay, he would work out an angle. So his angles were great. So we'd work out a very good angle to run at that wouldn't show him up. But at least he was never found wanting. There was never anybody coming to protect him. He was there. He had to do it himself. All right. There was never anybody. Chalabar might have been, chaperoning him on the right there and trying to get round the back to help him out. But I always felt he was never out of his depth, Thiago Silva.
Well, it's no, I agree. I agree about he's an exceptional player, and I've pulled him out because he is an exceptional player. Probably the greatest defender. Tony and I agreed with Ruud Gullit, and obviously John Terry, the outstanding centre half. But in general, fitness. I think that will be another show. Fitness thing. There's a big grey area about. I look at 1970, a national team, Brazil, who won the World Cup. Are you telling me that this Brazil team wouldn't live today at national level because of fitness?
Well, I think they'd all have to. They'd be operating on if they were alive now and still capable. They'd be operating at our fitness levels. So yes, if they were operating at our fitness levels, if they were training as much as we were.
No, I'm talking about them as they were. I mean, they're all.
It's very difficult, isn't it, to put one team from then against the team from now, just because all the.
You're talking about the fitness of 2024.
Yeah.
1970, which was 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, so really, we'll never know, will we? They were great teams.
That's a very
okay. Well, I think we probably kept John on the podcast for far too long. It's been great to listen to his anecdotes, and I was particularly interested to hear his story about his dad and how he got involved in football in the first place. It's been fascinating listening.
And next time I come to Stanford, if I ever get invited again, now we know.
Good.
I know you
are.
Good.
Good. Well, I'll come. Yeah, but okay. I thought you knew it anyway. But good. Okay.
Well, right. Jonathan,
thank you. But thanks for having me on.
And I tell you, I said to Tony straight away. I was although I was only a kid, but I remember your father, and I remember seeing Harry Fowler always around the area, around the King's Road, around the Chelsea Potter. Used to live around the back there, and I just took it that, that they were great old. Well, not old now, but they were great actors of their time, wasn't they? You know what I mean? Today
they were that. Yeah,
as you said, your dad.
Yeah, I think
they were great actors then. They were, like we heard to say with footballers, they were born too young, too soon.
Yeah.
In today's, I knocked about with Ray Winston, where you're talking about with you playing on a Sunday. Me and Ray, my son, Glenn Murphy. we used to play on a Sunday, and Ray was out of work, you know. And then I think he'd made Scum. Anyway,
Yes.
now look at him now, you know, he's with Jack Nicholson. But he could have been overlooked, you know, and come into the same category of what you're talking about.
I was in an episode of Minder with Ray, and he was supporting our
Was
team.
you?
He wasn't even and I had lines, and he didn't have any lines. And then his career.
I see the episode. I didn't see you though. How big were you?
He's in the background. He's in the back. I think he then had an episode where he was featured. He's only in the background. But yeah, no, I did 3 Minders. That's why I ended up playing for Dennis Waterman's football team, because I did a kids series called Pipkins, which had Hartley the Hare in it. And people are now, they've put it on Facebook, the stuff of nightmares, because the hare looked like a kind of evil villain. It had big buck teeth, and it mangled kind of made out of an old sack, I think he was. But yeah, so people post all about him, and I was one of the human presenters on it. So, but this was, once again, we're talking 40 years ago. But consequently, that's why I ended up playing for Dennis, because they wanted people who'd actually, you know, had been on telly. And I remember going to some lower division football ground for a charity game, and Dennis was injured, and Dennis just kicked off and went. And I heard a bloke in the crowd saying, he said, "I don't recognise anybody here. Who are they?" And the little kid with him said, "That's Tom from Pipkins," about me. So I thought, oh, good. I've been recognised by somebody in the crowd. It's really lovely.
I'm going to call you Tom from now on.
For sure.
So it wasn't a case of here today, gone tomorrow then, Jonathan?
No.
Sorry. Couldn't resist that one.
Very clever. Clever hair today. Very good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, it's been fascinating listening to your Chelsea stories, Jonathan.
Thank you. There are hundreds more. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get further on in me.
We'll do them on someone else's podcast.
I will. I won't do it on yours.
Someone else's podcast.
Absolutely, Alan. I wouldn't.
I will start getting Fulham supporters on.
And apologies for keeping you on for so long, Jonathan.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It's lovely to hear your stories, Alan.
I'm glad. Oh, what a lovely way to meet.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you,
okay.
mate. Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Get invited again into there. We'll have a proper drink.
Love it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks everyone for watching, and see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.